now have approximately 24 patients who we have 1-year follow-up after treating CCSVI. The follow-up mainly consists of MFIS scores, fatigue scores that is, and also MR imaging of the brain. And it's been very interesting to see this, because this is what I think one of the things we're all interested in, is that longitudinal follow-up. Not to say that whatever is done to initially treat CCSVI has to be sustainable, but at least to get an understanding of what effects may occur in the long term. I'm happy to report that, at least in terms of the fatigue scores, patients with relapsing remitting have shown about a 50% decrement from their initial score, which has actually gone lower between 2 months and 1 year. Now, the bad news, or the flip side, is primary progressive and secondary progressive, although initially showing a 50% decrease, have crept back up a little at the 1 year. Not all the way back to where they started, certainly, but it doesn't appear to be going down or even stable. Slight wastage of the gains they've had. Now, in terms of actually looking at brain lesions, we've seen some lesions actually disappear, but we've seen new lesions and enlarging lesions also. When you actually put this in the big context of things, it doesn't appear to be dramatically different than what we might expect with drug-modifying therapies. So again, we need more patients, we need longer follow-up, but this is the type of thing that we'd like to see, including other outcomes that we really have not, when we initially started at some of our work, really didn't understand what we wanted to study, such as OCT, optical coherence tomography, looking at nerve tract bundle thickness over time, obviously looking at cerebral perfusion, looking at exercise performance, looking at walking times, looking at a number of different quality of life issues that unfortunately we did not initially have the resources to ask patients to participate in. But going forward, I think these are the type of things, with each group having their own special interest, that we'll want to take out over time. Right now, what I'm interested about in trials is really seeing if you have MS and if you have CCSVI, extracranial venous obstruction, and if that's treated and removed, can we actually measure objectively physiological parameters that may correlate with symptomatic outcomes?
Since January of 2010, our lives have completely transformed. I am one of the members of a 18-man vascular surgery group, and we have really taken this project as if taken a bull by the horn in trying to understand CCSVI, its implications with multiple sclerosis, and really leading to a point where I think the biggest initiative that needs to happen is for all of us as a community and us as individuals in places like Albany and like Stanford and other places in the country, focus on developing single-center, multi-center trials that are prospective, that measure outcomes that are measurable. There are a variety of outcomes that are very ill-defined in MS. It's a very elusive disease, as we all understand today, and that's what makes it so much harder to understand. Even the outcomes we want to measure today are not ones that we can readily define and identify. But I think having appropriate studies moving forward and really getting some answers earlier on. We don't have to answer the entire MS puzzle, but really identifying how CCSVI truly fits into multiple sclerosis, which patients are affected, particularly so. Are there certain types of symptoms that get better versus other? Are there certain dynamics intracerebral that get better? Are there certain correlations with lesions that get better? And all the gamut of other things that are measurable. I think that would be really important. I think time is somewhat of the essence right now. There's a lot of awareness and a lot of campaigns and a lot of energy that is behind this initiative. And I think we really need to capture that today from a standpoint of having a multidisciplinary team that comes together. As a vascular surgeon, I certainly cannot answer this riddle by myself. I need my colleagues that are interventional radiologists. I need my colleagues that are physicists, my colleagues that really are neurologists and even neurosurgeons and other people that understand different dynamics of this MS puzzle.
funding for sure
Yeah.
at this time. Secondly, that this has been a very high profile, high sensitive, emotional, passionate through multiple groups, and trying to harness the disciplines that are involved into looking at this to really say, does this have merit? Is further evaluation warranted, or can we show that there's really no validity to this?
Yeah.
That's what I think is really on the table, and those discussions are sometimes difficult because people have their pre-existing thoughts on it.
Sure.
So I think funding, assuring that multidisciplinary cooperation and engagement, not passive engagement, but true engagement. And then finally, I think it's our own philosophical understanding that we're not going to have the perfect trial. That there is no perfect trial right now. We don't know exactly what the right things to measure are. We don't know the right time frame. We don't know necessarily the right treatment.
This, we understand the value of multidisciplinary approach to this, and I think there needs to be a comprehensive multidisciplinary approach to understanding the implications of CCSVI and multiple sclerosis. 1 year ago, I was a naysayer. Today, we were fortunate enough to get one of the first trials that are double-blinded, placebo-controlled, randomized trials in U.S. Up and running. And that didn't happen by fluke. That happened by us working with our neurologists. We had lots of meetings and a collaborative approach. We didn't quite end up doing things exactly how I envisioned them to do, but we certainly understood from the neurologists, we understood from our interventional counterparts, and we designed a trial that makes a lot more sense, that keeps patients safe, that really has objective criteria that we can measure at the end of the day. So I think that and funding and having the ability to sustain a trial are the two big things that could have a real positive impact if the society was to get behind this, if we were to get some wind behind the tails.
We're not even sure exactly what the precise parameters we need to measure are. We're in the process of defining that now, but I think we all are sensitive that time is of the essence. I sort of see multiple sclerosis as not necessarily a cancer equivalent, but some of the things that are going on in oncology now need to be brought to some of these neurodegenerative diseases such as MS. In other words, a more up-tempo cycle time, knowing if the treatment you're getting is actually working in a timely manner, not having to wait 1 year or 2 years and then just say, oh, well, this is progressing. I don't think people want that. What we really need to strive for is more accelerated cycle time in terms of deciding whatever therapy we're giving, are we getting an effect? So, as we talk about CCSVI trials, I think it's imperative that we demonstrate proof of principle and some validity in the concept that will happen to lend itself to a double-blind randomized study. And that's a little, I think, daunting when we talk about these words in the setting of a trial to patients with MS. But I think that it's important, if we're going to have something that's going to be convincing and have any persuasive power, that we at least have a control group that may not be getting treatment. That isn't to say that the patients who are in that control group won't all have the option of being treated at a later date, but it's probably best that they not know or be blinded to whether they received a endovascular therapy to remove the venous obstruction. Now, my personal bias is, again, that this should be a pretty short circle, because I think one of the problems we have with longer trials is we don't know the sustainability of balloon itself. Dr. Zamboni has said at 6 months there could be up to a 40 or 60% return. We don't want that to necessarily pollute. This gets back to the opening comments of saying, if we treat this, can we get an effect? So I'd like to see something very near term. I think it helps us gain some information of what parameters are changing so that we can do a larger trial, but it also gives the MS patients some confidence that they're not going to be in something and not know for a prolonged period whether they got treated or not.
Right.
And I think that can get into aspects of patient recruitment and actually selling the idea to patients.
I think there's two ways of looking at this. So one of the ways you can design a sham arm is to, if you charge everyone for the procedure, then you can go down a path of designing a sham arm that if the study shows validity, then at the end of the study, be it a 6-month study or a 1-year study, then you certainly provide that procedure free of charge to the patient because they've obviously already paid for it.
Yeah.
I think there are some other ways of designing the studies also that don't necessarily buy into patients paying for the entire procedure. You know, institutions can formulate standardized ways of charging a lot less for the entire procedure as long as they treat all patients the same, obviously. And that way, the upfront cost to the patients could be significantly lower. And that would not necessarily be a place where patients would be bought into having a quote-unquote free procedure at the end because they really never would be in a position to pay for the entire procedure in the beginning. So I think there are some creative ways within trial designs that you can adequately design the study as well as not have a significant impact on the patients to pay out of pocket.